Hello folks, I hope you are having a great day today. Hey, today we'll take another look at Saki. I've already reviewed two of his short stories in the horror genre for you, Serenity Vashtar and Music on the Hill. So today we'll take a look at another one, Laura, that he wrote. Now this collection that I have here has everything that Saki ever published. It includes his plays, his novels, and all of his short stories. And there's like hundreds and hundreds, like 950 pages. That's a lot of pages that are written by Saki. Now Saki, for those of you who may not remember, was a horror writer who was basically, and some other things too, who was basically a contemporary of H.G. Wells living in British society in Victorian era. He was somebody who was publishing in the 1890s through the 1910s and so forth. He'll die in his 40s in World War I. And he'll pass away while on the battlefront fighting against the Germans. He was in his mid-40s. He was too old for conscription and so forth, but he still enlisted as a soldier and fought in the trenches. He was actually killed by a German sniper in the trenches when one of his fellow people accidentally lit a cigar on fire. Not on fire. They lit it with a lighter, but that light was enough to cause the snipers to know where they were, and they shot him. And it happened to be the guy happened to kill the guy right next to him, which was of course Saki. I'm not going to tell you too much about Saki. We've already spent some time kind of unpacking his history and his past. He was a Scottish man who was born in Asia, has a fallen name for a lot of those folks over there, and also has a pen name that he picked up from that area. But anyway, we'll take a look at Laura for you. Laura is a 6-page short story, and I basically did some Googling before taking a deep dive into Saki. And as you can see here, I have his whole collection here. I just finished my collection of H.G. Wells stories. H.G. Wells, I have a collection of every single short story that H.G. Wells wrote. It's a big giant collection of stuff, and I went through it over about a month, and I was reading about a short story a day roughly, which was pretty good because I hadn't read a lot of those short stories, and I've been publishing some of those for you. But now that I finished, I wanted to go to another contemporary writer of his, and Saki was interesting me at the time. So I decided to take a deep dive into Saki. I've already read about 10 of these stories. But when finding out where to start, I spent some time kind of looking online for lists of the best works by Saki, and one of those is Laura, which we took a look at. In fact, I read Laura and the next story after I do this one back to back, literally in the same sitting in less than half an hour. One of the things that Saki's known very well for is having these very short stories. And at 6 pages, this is actually a longer short story of Saki's. But let's take a look at Laura. Laura has, the basic conceit of Laura is that the main character of Laura herself is somebody who is basically dying, and she's going to be dying on Tuesday, and it's on a Saturday. There's a lot of dark humor in the piece, by the way, a lot of lines and so forth. For example, here's from the second paragraph. Here I'm going to read for you one line from the story. "You're not really going to die, are you?" asked Amanda, who's one of Laura's friends. "I had the doctor's permission to live till Tuesday," said Laura. "The doctor's permission to live till Tuesday." "But this is Saturday. This is serious," gasped her friend Amanda. So you can kind of see already it has this sort of lighthearted, dark, comedic undertone to it. You can clearly tell she's not taking things seriously. She's a bit of a prankster. She'll admit to that multiple times in the story too. And she believes in reincarnation. And she believes that she's going to be punished in the next life because she would sometimes let revenge get against her. And she'll talk about times when she actually would do little pranks against her friend's husband, who would let things get a little too heated sometimes when his exchanges for it. He would care too much about things like his hens and his garden, stuff like that. So she would sometimes do some pranks that were geared towards those things. This is also a little bit of a confessional for her friend. And then anyway, of course, you'll find out about halfway through the story, she's going to die. Just like you think it is. And it's a very simple line, again, with a sort of a dark comedic undertone to it. I smiled as soon as I read the line. I thought it was funny. It was very cleverly done. And that's kind of Saki for you, in a nutshell, right? That's who he is. You'll follow along. Will she be reincarnated? She thought she was going to be reincarnated as an otter. She thought that'd be pretty cool, but will she actually be an otter? Or is she going to be something else? Is she going to be reincarnated at all? What's going to wind up? Or is she just going to be like a ghost that haunts people or whatever, right? It is a horror short story. It's going to have a horror trope in it somewhere. Somebody dying comedically is in a horror trope, right? There's obviously going to be something horrorish later to follow, but I'll leave you to it to figure out what's happening and follow along in the story. But it's a lot of fun. Saki is a brilliant writer. One of the things that Saki really likes to take aim at is sort of the puffery of the Victorian era. He has a lot of his pieces will be aimed at taking out these sort of stylings of the upper class during the Victorian era. So if that's something that you think is really fun from somebody who's living and breathing during the area, then this is definitely a guy you want to check out. And below I'll link you to both this story, which I believe is free online. His other stories that I've done for you have been. And then in addition to linking to the free story online, I'll also link you to this big giant, like almost 1,000-page collection. So that way, if you're interested in taking a deep dive into Saki like I am, you can do so. And you can do so. He's also regularly anthologized in a number of works because he is such a well-respected writer in the field, and he's also so short. So it's very easy to have a collection of horror short stories, the best or whatever, that includes a Saki story. Several of my horror short story collections that aren't like it's set in the Lovecraft mythos have at least one Saki story in them. It's very, very common to see that. So it's also fun to kind of take a deep dive into that guy who probably have come across at least once or twice. I did like this story, but the story that I'm about to hit the pause button for, I actually like better. It's been my favorite of the new stories I've read so far. So I'll go ahead and leave you to that. What'd you think about it? I'd be happy to talk about you with it in the comments below. Did you like it or dislike it? You know, I'm happy to unpack those for you. And hey, I want to thank you so much if you enjoyed this story. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be so many more to follow. And if you spent some time watching this, investing your time in this, hey, I just want to take a moment to thank you. We all have such busy days and busy lives. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's very humbling, and I appreciate that. So thanks again, and have a good one.